Hello and welcome to the class today. Today we're going to continue working on the drawing of these hands. In the previous class we blocked in the top hand. This time we're going to add skin texture to the hand. Follow along and I'll show you step by step how we do that. Alrighty, so let's take a look. This is where we ended off last time. So we've got a good block in over here. We've got our tonal values pretty well along the road. Let's maybe go guys, just let me know, is there an echo or not? Let's just go closer in. So you can see we have got a reasonable amount of texture in there already, but we want to get it to that point over there. So if you did miss the previous class, the link is in the description. You can go and follow that over there. So to get ourselves from there to there, you can see is just fine tuning. So to do fine tuning, we pretty much need fine tools to get the job done. So the first one of that is now, needless to say, pencils with fine points. So that one over there is an 8B. So you'll see I've got all my pencils are color coded. So the black one is an 8 and the 8B, the yellow one is an H, and so on. So that way you can tell which pencil I'm using. Then you need a nice fine eraser like the mono eraser. You can use these pencil shaped erasers and just sharpen them up nicely, but I find that their tips get a little bit too blunt too quickly for this kind of work over here. So you'll find that you're gonna often be having to sharpen that eraser, where with this guy over here, if you need a quick sharp point, then all you do is you just take your craft knife and then you just cut off that tip, say at a 45-degree angle, and then you end up with a super sharp point that you can do the finest erasing with. Then you absolutely need to get blending stumps. So in the description I have also added a link to show you how to make your own blending stump. I always make my own. The bought ones don't always do the way and have the shapes that I want them to be. So I've got two blending stumps, one with a super sharp point like that, and then one with a flatter point like that. So this is going to give me nice broader blending, and that's going to help me get the detail work in. You make both the same way, it just depends on, you put your finger in there to grab that little loose piece of paper, and you pull this guy and you can change it to a broad round point that looks like this, and then in the end of the day you just come back in and just flatten that out, and that gives you a nice flat tip to do beautiful broad shadings with. And then of course today we'll definitely still use our trusty old makeup blending sponge. All right. So when you're starting with this, I mean, we've sort of started on the left and worked our way right, and you could do the same thing when you're doing this. I think what I'm going to do is let's start with these two fingers here. They're going to show you the bulk of the different techniques, and then these ones will be pretty much more of the same, and that there will have his own little techniques that we'll do as we go along. So let's just go to there, and then I will zoom in a bit more on that. On those fingers over there. Alrighty, let's do that. To get that skin texture, you'll notice that the skin is sort of liney this way and it's liney that way. And that's because you have pores on your skin that breathe. So the easiest way for me to show you how that works is let's just take a bit of Play-Doh. Let's do that there. Just flatten that out. So there's your skin. Let's just take a pencil or a brush or something. So that pore itself is indented like that. But now because your skin is elastic, it's softened. It's everything is rounded. There's no hard edges. So I'm softening up that edge over there. And this is now what happens with your pore. Just soften it out nicely like that. Now let's see if we can get the light to hit this at different angles. So can you see what happens? You've got the color of the skin, and then you've got that little shading over there. But now you have multiple pores. You don't just have one. You have another one here, and you have maybe another one over here, and another one here. Let's just try and soften those guys out. So look what happens. Now it forms like a line over here, and it forms lines running that way, in between those pores. So you've got all these multitude of shadings that are happening, where you've got inside the pore it's really dark, and then because the skin is rounded, it gets gradually lighter until it hits the top. And then it starts going darker again into the next valley, and so on. And that's what's happening over here. So we need to do all those little, get that impression of all those little lines and dimples and valleys and so on. So it's going to be a case of making some areas lighter and some areas darker. Alrighty, so as usual, I'm putting my just a sheet of tracing paper down there to protect the drawing underneath. I can rest my hand on this. Then I'm going to take also a sheet of paper which I've covered with graphite. So it's a plain sheet of photocopy paper, and I've just taken an 8B graphite stick and I've just covered it with this. Same as what you did in the previous class. Because you're going to take this and you're going to pick up little bits of graphite off of that onto your blending stump. like that. And you're going to be able to draw with that now. For example, let's take this area over here. Let's work on that. So you can see we did get a little bit of stripiness, but now some places it's darker, so you need to get that darker. So can you see there? Now the difference between doing that and just using the pencil, why didn't I just use a pencil? It's because the blending stump gives you a softer line. Let's use a pencil, put a line next to that. You'll find that the pencil line gives you hard edges. So sometimes you do use the pencil if you want to get sharper lines, and we'll get to that. I can see it in that area over there. There are harder edges and stuff over there. But like over here, where things are a lot more how would you put it, less prominent, a little more subtle kind of lines. This is better for getting those subtle edges and stuff in. And what I'll also do is I'll keep rotating as I'm doing this. I'm constantly rotating my blending stump, because that also helps just keep him in a nice sharp point. And I'm not pressing hard either. So I'm always going to start off by looking at those most prominent lines and marks. So we did start marking some of them in last week already when we were doing some erasing work. Then as you go along, you're also going to see that, like, for example, this area over here is, as you were working, his tonal value isn't quite right yet. So get him right as soon as possible, and you're going to use your blending stump. Pick up some graphite. Now you can use that. To make those little adjustments. And of course, if necessary, you can also use your pencil to do shadings as well. I think over there I'm going to use my 8B, because it is quite dark over here. And then we do want to get that little transition where the finger disappears into the shadows. You actually can't see where the finger ends and the darkness starts. So as I do this, I'm not pressing hard with the pencil. Everything can still be erased. So I'll put it down, and then I'll take the blending stump, and I'll blend that in. Because remember, there's now no hard edges. Everything is gently blending one into the next. Because what happens is you've got this finger there is now like this. So can you see what happens is gradually curling away into that darkness over there. Your finger's not flat, this is a rounding. Let's curl your hand up like this. there you can see it nicely. It's a rounding, so it's curling gradually away and away and away from the light, getting gradually darker and darker and darker. So how quickly this fades away just depends on how round that object is. And how much of it you can see. For example, on this part of the finger here, he rounds out away out of view. So that's why he gets darker quite quickly. But like on this finger over here, we're seeing that whole side. So he seems to fade away a lot slower as a result. Okay, so to get these little indentations and stuff over here, I'm actually stealing a little bit of color over here, a little bit of graphite. And then I'm putting it down over here. Now, can you see over here? It's got like a little bit of a curve there. As that, there's a little bump over there, and there's a wrinkle, and there's a wrinkle. So you've got to get that shading where all those little humps and bumps happen. And you're doing all of that with the blending stump. Where it's darkest, you go over multiple times, and where it's not quite so dark, you just go over once or twice, very gently. Okay, so you can see this one here is a real distinct dark fold. So inside that dark fold, I'm going to add some pencil mark. And you come back in with the blending stump and you blend it out to the sides. You look carefully and see how does that blending stump, or how does that shadow blend away. And you do that with the blending stump. For example, there it blends away reasonably fast over there, but here it blends away slowly. Then you can see, like over here, you've got smaller little wrinkles and creases happening. So I'm going to start by trying to get just a suggestion of those wrinkles. The dark bits. Then you can come back in with your eraser. Without any pressure whatsoever, just gently lift out the highlights on them. So let's go back to the Play-Doh again. So let's just get that nice and smooth. And let's add in a wrinkle. So now we've got a wrinkle in there like that. So look what happens. You've got that, the darkening on the inside, but now on this side over here, you've got a little highlight on it. Then you've also got this little piece of skin here is now rounded. So again, it's a highlight going gradually darker as it curls around. So you've got constant little shadings happening. Everything is little shadings. So you've got to find those little shadings and things. So what's usually going to happen, you're going to have the dark and the light are going to be next to each other, and then they fade from the light gradually darker until it's dark. So you've got the light here. Let me point to something that's really skinny. Got the light here going gradually darker until it gets to that shadow over there. Then suddenly, boom, you've got your lighter one going darker again. Right, so as you do all these little shadings and blendings and things, I try and work accurate, and as I go I'll gradually fiddle these guys to be reasonably accurate, but it takes time. The more accurate you want to work, the more time it's going to take you. So you do have to just always bear that in mind, because that's going to help you decide now how long you're going to spend on this artwork. The more accurate you want it to be, the more effort you're going to be putting in. And the more, obviously, the more time it's going to take. So you take a lot of time, you get a more accurate result, because you're gradually fine-tuning more and more and more of all these tonal values and stuff like that. Alright, let's leave that guy there because he's now out of the picture. I've wandered off a little bit. Let's come back to here. So first thing I can see is now that I've got that nice and dark in over there, here I can see that this area's tonal value isn't quite right. So when I'm adjusting tonal values and stuff, that's why I'm generally going to use just this broad guy so that I can do those broad shadings in. So can you see what I'm doing? I'm doing this, picking up some graphite, laying it down here at the darkest place where I need it to be darkest. And then as this graphite on the blending stump becomes less, then I'll move over to the areas where I need it to be a little bit more subtle. Alrighty, let's go over to the thinner blending stump now. Right, so you see what I'm doing with this. I'm going to move him a little bit more out of the way. So here in the darker area, you're going to have darker shadows and darker little lines and darker things like that. And less highlights. Here where it's lighter, you're going to have less darker bits and more highlights. That's the difference. So yeah, I'm just getting as much of this tonal value right as what I can now. So as you go along, obviously you're going to start getting places where you feel maybe your tonal value isn't quite right, and it needs to lighten up again. That happens quite often. And when that does, then you're just going to go over to your eraser. So I'm going to have to do it in a few seconds. Just want to get this little wrinkle in over here. So if you do, then take your kneaded eraser. So when he's like this, he's now really nice and clean. So he's going to lift off like crazy. So what I'll usually do, if I need to just lift off something really subtle, I'm first going to tap him over here and get him dirty. You see that? Now you've got all this graphite already stuck to the eraser. So he can't lift too much off. So I'll just tap him once or twice here on a piece of paper or whatever. And then you can tap him at the place that you need to lighten. And look there, it just lightens it up ever so slightly. Because that's all we're doing today. We're working with really fine little tonal value changes. Here you've got that little bump by your knuckle itself. Feel your own knuckle and you'll feel it. It's a little higher here. In the center's got a dip and it comes out again. So those two little higher bits are picking up more sunlight. And that's why they're lighter. So I'm not erasing, I'm not rubbing, I'm literally just tapping. Just tapping. Only if I need to lift out a lot, then I'll maybe, in that tapping motion, move a little bit like this. Okay, so like that guy there, I can see he's just slightly too light. So I'm going to use my flat one and just flat blending stump, just gently go over him, and that'll soften up his tonal value. And correct that. Right, let's continue going down here. So I'm going to just start getting some of this dark in here, just so that I can plot out as far as I can this finger. Where does he end? Because it does, what we're seeing there is this piece here. So you've got all of this that's sort of out of view and going into the shadow. So we've got to suggest a little bit of that, this front little piece of the finger over there. So we do have some tonal value before we get full darkness. So I'm going to try and just establish that little edge over there. As best I can. And here's where the full darkness starts. I'm going to press it just a little bit harder there. Not too much. Just a little bit. The shadows sort of just creep up on you in this drawing over here. There's no sudden hard edges. They creep up on you. Even here on this finger, I'm shading that in ever so slightly over there. And then I'll come back with a blending stump and soften up all those little transitions. Until I've got those tonal values just right. Alrighty, so I think we've got a reasonable transition over there now. So now here I'm just going to work on getting this tonal value more correct in this area. So now, needless to say, the more accurate you get all these guys, the more realistic it's going to look. So if you're working like here, we don't know this person. It's not, we don't have to get an exact likeness of the hand. Or as long as we can get it to look realistic, then we're happy. But if you're drawing somebody's hands that you know, you do need to get that likeness, then you definitely want to take your time and get all these little tonal values correct. And in the correct places as best you can. For example, I can already see that there's now in the wrong place, so I'm having to move him. And that's fine. Not the end of the world. That's easily done. And you'll also find when you start doing stuff like this, initially it takes you quite a while to get going. Like now, you can see I'm still busy finding my feet on the tonal values and on the positionings and even on the techniques. Even though you know them, it takes you a while to sort of, how would I put it, get your hand and your eye in. But then once you do, then you'll find that stuff starts going a lot quicker. Because now you've got the hang of what you're doing. Okay, there's another little wrinkle over there. There's a little wrinkle over there. Okay, let's get that dark area in over there. Have you also found that like some days it almost feels like whatever you're drawing just doesn't want to work out right? Especially in the beginning, I found that used to happen to me quite often. You draw, or, you know, when you're painting, it just nothing wants to work. Nothing wants to look good today. And then other days, gee, you can just draw and nothing goes wrong. And then as I got more experience, I found that sort of those bad drawing days got less and less. And I think it's just a case of, as you get more experience, you build up on your repertoire of techniques and stuff that you have to fall back on when you need to do something. Right, so I'm just doing a little bit of shading here with a pencil just to get me slightly started. Do you also get those bad pencil days? Alright, so I've added that basic in. So now I'm working on getting the shading. And as I get those shadings in, I'm working on getting the skin texture, that stripiness in there. And as I do, look there, now you're suddenly starting to get a nice rounding on this finger, now that we've got our tonal values more accurate. And because it's a bit more textured, it's starting to look a lot more realistic as well. Alright, so I'm just concentrating here on getting all these little marks and things erased. And can you see, as I work this way and then I work that way, you're sort of cutting those marks of yours shorter. Let's do it this way. Let's take that and let's maybe just put a nice little layer of tonal value down there. And let's do it on a larger scale so you can see what's happening. So I'll do that, and let's get a just big as old school eraser. So this is now your Tombow. So everything is all magnified now. So there's your tonal value. Now you're erasing some stuff this way. And as you erase, you're not erasing over the same place all the time. So look what happens. That central area tends to be lighter, and the outside bits automatically form little shadings. Let's say there's maybe another one over here, like that. And then you start cutting that in with other ones going crosswise, following the contour of the finger or the hand or whatever it is that you're shading. Like I say, you're not always going over the same place, so you're getting an automatic shading happening there. And can you see, there's your paw just coming out automatically. And then sometimes what you'll end up doing is, now because you've got a wrinkle over there, now you're adding your little shadow in on this side, or whichever side is the opposite of the sun. Can you see how that 3D is starting to pop out at you? So that's what we're doing here, just obviously on a much smaller scale. So you got to keep looking for those directions and get those directions right. And as you're erasing, you're not erasing over the same place, and that just sort of happens automatically. Then you also got to take a look. Sometimes, for example, over here, your highlights are now lighter, but over there, they're not. So then you come back in with your blending stump and just soften down those highlights. Even though you've put them in, they're not too light. So you just come back in and just soften them. And then over here, they're lighter again. And that's simply because the skin itself has now gone and made a little hump and a bump. So the skin is higher here, lower there, and higher here. And that's why you've got those different little tonal values. Okay, let's take a look over here. Too bright over there. It needs to, as it curls into that shadow, it's got to form a shading. Then as it comes out, you can get a little bit lighter. So you can lift out a little bit more over there. No pressure on this eraser whatsoever. It's super being super gentle with him. Alright, let's continue with that guy. So first things first, work on that tonal value. So we ended up over here by this nice little dark edge, so we may as well just continue. You can see it's really nice and dark over here in this area. So last time with our blocking stage, you may have got yourself 90% there. So obviously the more accurate you work then, the less fine tuning you have to do now. Alright, so I can see now as I'm putting down, nothing really is too exciting is happening, which is telling me that this paper of mine has now run out of loose graphite. So I'm going to take my pencil, my graphite stick, graphite crayon is the correct word, and just give him another layer. So I'm just going to do it off to the side because I don't want to make any dents in my drawing. There we go. See, now we've got some graphite that we can work with. So I'll pick some more up. Let's see. Here in this little area over here, there's a I'm not going to get too much detail with this flat guy because he is now quite flat and can't work accurate with him. Just broad shadings. That's his job. So I'm just looking at the tonal values. Once I can see they're in the ballpark, then it's awesome. Now I can continue. Start adding those little detail bits in there. Okay, so remember this is shadow area here, so we're going to have all the lines going to have deeper shadows. And on the highlight side, the lines are going to have brighter highlights. All that there is now still too dark as well, so let's get that rounding off done over there. We haven't done that. Right, let's get that edging on that finger also right. Here we do have a bit of a sharp knuckle that's disappearing on us. And it seems to be disappearing around here, like that, over there. So the way I'm judging this is I'm judging that distance between the finger below it. Yeah, it seems something like that. Alrighty, so let's work on these little highlights. Let's start getting the positioning of those guys right. I think we're reasonably happy with him. This guy over here, he looks like he also needs to move. We didn't quite estimate him 100% the first time. So let's get rid of him and let's move him. So I'm just going to work on erasing that, the shape of it. Remember, I'm working very light, and I'm obviously not going over the exact same spot every time, the same place, and that's giving me that automatic little shading that you get. There's another little line over there. I don't worry too much if it goes a little bit too light or anything like that. As long as I can get that shape right, I can work on it. I can get those tonal values and make adjustments without any problems whatsoever. Right, so this one, there's not quite as much texture and stuff in this area over here. So it's obviously quite flat. So I'm going to work on getting rid of most of that lininess because it is flat. No lininess needed. So we can go to maybe over here. Here there's a distinct little edging on that hand over there. So I'm going to work on those little roundings. And then it smooths out and comes out that way. And all of that is just a gentle little shading. So just super light little erasings to get that shading right. Right, let's see. So there's got flat, and then here, along here, there's a little bit of lighting coming in there. So it starts off from here, and it's just a little bit of lighting. Maybe we can even lift that out with the kneaded eraser, just with a sharp little point. Because all we need is almost just tonal value coming out there, but it does seem to have the odd little hump and bump. So I'm just going to tap that over there. It'll create its own little humps and bumps. Alrighty. So you can see instantly it's gone a little bit too light, but I don't worry about that. Look there. Turn it back down. Not a problem. Now I've got that fine little tonal value difference. Can you see it? Fine tonal value difference. Really easy. Okay, let's see over here. We've got a nice little dark spot over there. So I'm going to go over that multiple times to get that nice and dark. And then going up here, now we're starting to see a little bit of lininess for the skin texture. So let's work next to this using that angle as a guide. I can see there's a little lighter guy there, so I'm lifting him out. And then from there, we'll work out these other little textures. So as I go, I'm also constantly cleaning my eraser. Just basically I'm rubbing it just on my shirt. I've got a golf shirt on. I'm just rubbing it on the texture of the golf shirt. Okay, here I'm starting to see some wrinkles and things which we now need to get in. So that one goes over there, and then there's a more subtle one over here. And there's one or two little more subtle ones as we go down over here as well. So I just push them straight over those little lines that we got. And you come back in and just here and there break those little lines that you've worked in. Alrighty, let's work on these little wrinkles here a little bit more. So I'm lifting out those highlights a little bit more. And then just working in the shadows in between them a little bit more. Just to get them a little bit more prominent. A little bit more distinct. Remember, as you do this, if it goes a little bit too light, it doesn't matter. Just take your broad blending stump and then you work it in. Cool. Let's continue working on these guys just to get their tonal values and stuff more correct. Alrighty, so moving up to this area over here. It's quite an area of high contrast. Can you see that? So we did now already start adding in some lines over there. So now what I'm going to do is just work in the shadow lines as well, because we haven't done that yet. So as I'm doing this, I'm working carefully in between those previous guys that I've erased. And that's bringing out those previous guys. The lighter lines that we put in are now becoming more prominent. And if necessary, I'm also cutting them thinner. Okay, so this area here needs to go darker, so I'm going to work on getting more darker guys in and killing some of those brighter bits. Alrighty, so here we have to look really careful to get these little directions right. It's quite liney. Yeah, so I'm just concentrating here on getting those directions as accurate as what I can. Once I do, come back in and just make sure I've got those lines and stuff correct. And then of course you can adjust your tonal values, because that whole line there is now one tonal value, but the skin there is curling. So there's lighter and it needs to go darker. So you're going to come in and you're going to blend those lines of yours so that they're lighter here. And gradually going darker in, and that's curling your skin for you. Am I getting this to look absolutely 100% the same? No, of course not. And that's not the idea. If you can get this, the skin texture the texture itself looking real, then you've achieved your goal. You don't need to get every single pore and stuff in exactly the correct place. That's not necessary. You're welcome, Linda. I'm glad you're enjoying the lesson. If there's, like for example here, you maybe want just a more distinct little line, then what you can do is on the line itself, let's say for example you want that little darker line over here. Just do a little bit of a rounding with a pencil, just a little rounding and a shading like this. In other words, what you're kind of doing is you're broadening. Maybe I'll do that for you on a over here, just on a bigger scale, so you can see what's happening. So let's get some tonal value down there. So we've got something to work from and erase into. So now you've got some stuff that you've now erased like this. Alright. And now you've come back in and you've added a darker line like this. But now you want to make it more prominent. So what you're going to do is on that white line over there and in between, just darken up the white line itself, and then the little black bit that's in between, that's now darker, you're going to just broaden it. So there's your line. You're broadening this darker area over here, because that's now the paw. It's darker here, and then shade it outwards, and outwards, and outwards, and outwards, like that. See there. You do have to still just be careful to keep it subtle. So what I'm doing with that guy, I've now put it in. It's too dark, so I've tapped just a little chisel point over there onto my paper so that it's dirty. And I'm going to tap over that line again that I've put in there. So I'll just do the one so you can compare. And see how often I could type over it. Now look there. It's just softened that up versus that guy. See how harsh he is? And that guy's soft. It's just softened him up. And that gets it looking a lot more natural. Awesome. Let's continue adding little skin lines in over here. Yeah, I think here we can also just broaden those guys. But I'll use a softer pencil this time, not the 8B. We'll use the H. Just to get these guys here a little bit more subtle than over there, because things aren't quite as deep over here. And it's in quite a bit of shadow over here too. Okay, that goes there. I think this area is now reasonably accurate. Alright, let's quickly stand back, because it's always nice to stand back every now and again. You can see that you're at least accomplishing something. Can you see how much more detail we have in these two fingers versus those two? So now this is really important. If you've got high detail like this, and you do need to get rid of some graphite dust and erasings, crumbs and stuff, you need a super soft brush and just the lightest little flick, just the absolute tips of the brush, because even just the lightest little flick like that, you can upset these super fine shadings and details and stuff that you've got in there. And what's also important is every now and again stand back, because when you're working up close you'll often miss little subtle tonal value changes. Can you see, for example, in this area over here, there we're looking good, and then boom, suddenly it goes darker where it needs to be lighter. So then you can come in here and just fine tune that tonal value that you've got in there to get it more accurate. I think even this here can go just in this little area over here, just lightening up those little lines and things. But you can see all those adjustments do go quickly. It's not an issue, but you have to stand back in order to see them. I think I'm going to make that just ever so slightly lighter, just one or two very gentle taps on that, not too much, and that should get that tonal value about right. Cool bananas. So we nearly finished this finger, just need to get that little, the curl, the bend over there right. So let's take a look. In that fold over there, you've got that little bit of a highlight in this vicinity around here. So I'm going to just gently rub over that one spot. That should get us that highlight. Okay. So what that is, you've got this piece of the finger and then that piece of the finger. So can you see what happens? The one is darker and the other one is lighter. And it's a bit of a sharp edge over there. So that's what we're doing over here now. We're adding that little sharp edge in on the top one. And the bottom one is the guy that's getting the highlight. Because the top one is curling away from us. And the top one is now picking up that highlight. So that highlight's also, again, as you erase, it becomes pretty much a monotone line. Just use a pencil just to give that guy a shading there as well, just to get a good contrast between them. So I'm using the blending stump to shade my erased line over there. Okay, let's get this little tonal value in here from the bottom section of that finger over there. And it does seem to be a little bit broader. Super gentle erasing using the eraser, and I'm not even cleaning the eraser. That also forces you, because it's dirty, forces you to get those subtle erasings or subtle shadings, because he can't lift up a lot. is going slightly broader, or lighter, sorry, not broader, lighter over there. Alrighty, I think we're okay with that guy over there. Let's work on that. That's also quite an interesting little piece. So let me just line up that view there for us. Yeah, I think let's pop him over there, eh? So this piece is not particularly difficult. We've got 90% of it sorted in our initial blocking in stage. So what we're going to do now is just work on getting the tonal values right for a start, and then obviously after that getting a bit more texture in there. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to take just my kneaded eraser, because I can see these darks over here are darker than what they should be. So I know this is a rounding, so I'm looking for that rounding. So I'm going to erase here where it's at its lightest, and then gradually as the eraser gets dirtier, I'm going to move across into that dark. So I'm going to have a shading with the eraser. So it's still clean now at this stage. Just gently tapping there to get that light a bit lighter. And now as it's getting darker, I'm moving over to the middle area. And there we go. Okay, so let's do it with this guy over here. Where's my lightest bit? My lightest bit is here, and then it's going slightly darker as he cools down over there. But across the width of that fold is pretty much a flat color. Slightly darker at one point. So in this case, I'm going to be tapping more over here where it's lighter, and as the eraser gets dirtier, I'm going to tap downwards, so it is lifting up less and less. So with the previous one, it was left to right. This one is top to bottom. It's the same technique. And we did already get that, these little, some folds and stuff in there. So all I'm doing now is just adjusting the tonal value of those folds. Okay, let's go to our thin blending stump, and let's get one or two of these little creases in there. Those super fine creases, so I've put them in with the blending stump to get them that rounding of it. And now just in that center bit, I'll come back in with a pencil and just sharpen the line right in the center bit. Like that. It goes to there, and then here, these guys are fading outwards. So I'm gently just making them fade away. The lightest touch I can possibly muster. This guy here, he's now dark. He's a very prominent little fold over there. So as I bring this guy in, I'm using just a little bit of a curly motion, because it's not a straight line. Maybe your skin's now still got textures. So I'm doing this. So I'm exaggerating the movement. But that's how I'm putting in that little line over there. Sometimes I'm curling this way, and then other times I'm curling this way. So it's a broken line. And that makes it look like there's some creases and folds going this way, and some creases and folds going that way. Pretty much the same as what we did over there, to be honest. It's the same concept. Here you can see it bigger, so that's why you got those larger roundings. Here it's the same thing, it's just a lot more finer. That's all. So guys, if you're enjoying the class, please don't forget to leave a comment and like the video. That way YouTube knows this class is worthwhile showing to other artists. Every like is a vote for the class. You see, I put in the main one here. Here's a more subtle one. So I can instantly put him in, because most of my graphite that I picked up ended up there. And I can just put in that very subtle one with the leftover graphite. Alrighty, so moving up here. Here I can see this is lifted up, but this here is a little bit more dented in as it comes up to meet that. So I'm getting that tonal value right. Like that. Can you see? This is lighter, then it goes darker, then it gets lighter as it goes up there like that. Then there it goes darker again as it gets closer to that knuckle. So we've got to get all these little tonal values correct, because that's what shows us the shape of these guys and gets their shapes right. Looking good. Okay, so inside that there's some subtle little skin textures. So I'm just gently erasing those little lines. Very gentle. And let's get some going this way as well. Yeah, that should pretty much do for that. Over there. Okay, so there I was just working on that tonal value to get it more accurate. Okay, over here, let's start getting these tonal values right. This whole area here needs to go darker. Then into each of these guys over here, there's some little creases as well. So we did start plotting out some stuff last time. Whether they're perfectly accurate, I don't know. But we'll pop them in. Now, a little bit more accurate. So what I'll often do, as I'm doing this, I'm taking my, just a reference picture. Let's turf this guy. I'm just taking a reference picture. And ideally you've got one that's 1-to-1. And now you putting your finger on the spot that you're working with. So I'm going to try and work left-handed here for a second just to illustrate what I'm doing. So I've put in that first guy over there, and now the next guy I'm going to judge his distance. So his distance is maybe like this. So I'm going to put in that guy over there. Then I'll see the next guy is out there. I do have other guys over there, so I'm going to just use them as long as they're more or less. In other words, you're keeping your finger in that correct place, and that helps you just judge those little placings of these guys. And then once you've got those main ones placed in, then from there it's easy to get the other guys, the next ones in. And then obviously once you've got that, now you can start adding all your other little highlights and stuff next to those dark guys. Alright, so out from this direction, what's happening now is now you're starting to see more rougher texture and stuff. So you're going to see more distinct pore holes. So now I'm going to use my my blending stump, and I'm going to add just those distinct little marks. So as you just zip it like that, quick little squiggle, and that'll show that it will form its own little shading, its own little darker center bit. And that's why you can't do without this blending stump, because it gets all that texture in for you absolutely instantly. And all I'm doing here now is just using the photo as a guide. I'm never going to get it exact. Not even going to try. I'm just going to follow it as best I can. So you'll see like there's places like this where you have distinct little pore holes, but then there's other places where those pore holes form more of a line, like we have down in this area over here. So you're going to have this kind of an effect, in other words. All those little holes have now just connected with each other. So I'm putting them in with little wiggles and squiggles, but those little wiggles and squiggles eventually also now just form a line. And here and there I break those wiggles and squiggles, or that line, so that it becomes just a broken wiggly squiggly line. Man, that's descriptive. Couldn't get more descriptive than that. And you can see it's not accurate whatsoever. I'm absolutely just doing my own thing here. What is important is that you get these angles right. I can see these guys are curling around underneath the arm like that. So I'm wiggling and squiggling them in underneath the arm. Alrighty, I can see some of the highlights are a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to go over it with my broader blending stump, just to soften up those little just darken up those little highlights over there. And then I'll come back in and just selectively lift out some other little highlights, literally just quite rough little dabs and taps. Okay, let's continue up here. So here it's not trying to work too accurate because this is heading out of the picture. In other words, you don't really want the guy to look here. You want his attention to be moving inwards. You see, we're right at the edge of the drawing, and here is where the focal point is. Sorry, let me just bring that up. I queued it up and I never clicked it. Here is where we're working now, so it's right out of the picture. It's part of the vignette. Don't add too much detail over there. But when we come to here's the focal point where the coins and stuff are. Here we want to spend lots of time adding all that detail in. So in other words, this area here, you could literally, you could rush it if you wanted to. I'm not going to rush it because I want this drawing to look nice and real, but I am not adding as much detail in here as what I am with the rest of the drawing. Okay, so here's some nice dark little distinct folds in the skin over here. I'm just going to pop them in with a pencil to get the dark in, and then go over them with the blending stump to get them worked in. Can you see how they're curling in this way to meet the arm there like that, and that top of the arm there also just fades out gradually out of view. Alright, let's work on our tonal values over here, because all this here is now still too light. Okay, here I'm adding, same as what we did in this area over here, with the blending stump. I'm just adding those little dips and dabs in here using the pencil. Simply because the blending stump can only go so dark, and the pencil is going to give you a little bit darker. We'll get a few little darker guys in over here, just to show you that, remember, in the dark, your dark, in the shadow area, the darker things appear darker. In the lighter area, the lighter things appear lighter. So I'm just adding some of these darker guys in there. It's just and the lighter bits are darker. Cool, so that area there went nice and quick. So we're just going to blend that away here by adding just less and less of these guys in this area over here. So also bear in mind your perspective. If you're seeing something that's round, let's go to this. So those little pore holes over there, if you look at it from the front, would, for example, be round like this. But now you're seeing it from the side. Can you see what happens? It's become an oval. And you're seeing it at that angle. So it's an oval running in that direction. Over here, it's an oval running in that direction. And over here, it's an oval running in that direction. You see that? So you have to just adjust these little squiggles that you do so that they're in that correct perspective angle. And obviously, don't forget to keep your blending stump a nice little sharp point. So you'll see I'm even often turning this blending stump to make sure that I get this nice and sharp. It doesn't flatten off on one point. Alrighty, let's come back to this area over here. So let's go back in, add that, overlay back in again. Let's just start getting some of these guys in over here. They're not as prominent or as bright as that, so I'm keeping them just a little bit more subdued. Not lifting them out as much. And then we have over here, we've got this. A little bit of a shading happening there. So that shading is now literally a shading. So I'm putting his shape in like that. But now I'm erasing back over that those shadows that I put in there to shade them. And the same here on the top. It's not a hard edge, it fades itself out. So I'm fading it out. No hard edges. It's quite an unusual little bump the person has got over there, eh? Maybe that's one of the defining features of this person's hand, is that little bump. Because it does look like somebody that's really old and their hands are quite weathered, seen lots of hard work in their life. So maybe it's just a wrinkle, you know, that's popped up. Yeah, it's just a few little shadings and things. Alrighty, let's move up to that area over there. So I'm just going to move it over to that camera for now so that I can move the other one up. Okay, we can go to that. Let's move the picture up. Yeah, I think he'll be good over there, eh? So this is quite an interesting piece here. Let's bring this printout back into play. Take a look over here. Here you can see what we've been doing here in a larger format, where you can see you've got the lininess, but it's not solid. You've got lines running across this way, and then there you can see those little broadening pores quite nicely. You see them. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So where do we start? What's the first thing we need to do? Get the tonal value right, eh? For example, here. That's not dark enough over there. Am I worried about the lininess and all that stuff at this point? No, just want that tonal value right. If I can get some form of this lininess in there for now, yeah, then that's great. If I can't, that's okay. So we were 90% there with our initial blocking in. So that's great. That's got us to where we need to be quite quickly. There we go. Now we've got a nice little valley there in between those fingers. Alright, let's go over to the finer one and then start adding a few bit more of these little details in. So I'm just dabbing and tapping. Dabbing and tapping, and that's gradually giving us that line, but in a broken fashion. So as always, I'm going to try my best to get it reasonably accurate. Am I going to get all these little wrinkles and things at the right places? No, probably not. But it'll be fairly accurate, and that's good enough. So I'll alternate between the eraser and the blending stump. Quite dark in this area over here, so I'm going to add quite a bit of these look really dark little lines and marks and things to darken everything up there and adjust that tonal value. But then it quickly goes lighter in that area over there. So now you've also been drawing for quite a while. And depending on how hard you've been pressing on your blending stump, you may have become blunt again. And if that's the case, then just stop and quickly recreate your point. Let's go wide. So you just take off your masking tape, your sellotape, or whatever you used. Just gently get rid of that, just so that he's loose again, like this. You can put your hand back in, grab that little corner, and just move him until he's nice and super sharp again. There we go. There's your detail back. Look at that. Okay, and I've also been going for a while, so my paper with the graphite has now run out of graphite, so I'm giving him another coat as well. You can almost think of it as a reset that you've just done now. Alrighty, cool. Look how nice it's working now. Nice, beautiful, sharp point. Our blending stump is happy with us, our drawing is happy with us, and we're happy with the drawing. So that's all great. Okay, so I've got my lines there. Let's break those lines up here with a few little broader humps and bumps. And then also we work in some bumps in between the darker bits. Okay, so over there, it's really, really fine. So I'm going to go over to my H pencil, just add in a few little distinct darker lines in between there as well. So I'm really careful to work out highlights with the eraser and some darker lines in between with a pencil. Cool bananas. Okay, so over here it's also a nice little dark. Maybe even go over to an 8B on that guy. So really nice dark wrinkle or crease over there. And he's coming around this way like this. And there's one or two little darker guys around him as well. The rest we should be able to work in with the, so remember, you put in with a pencil, don't forget to come over him with your blending stump. And over there, there's just one or two little, very subtle wrinkles that you can see. They're all being washed out by the brighter light. And here on this edge, we're starting to just see a few little wrinkles that are curling away from us. Alrighty, let's get that tie in between these wrinkles over here, because we've just sort of started suggesting them. We never actually fully developed them in this area over here. So let's do that. That should be good enough for the pencil, and the rest we can just put in with just put him in there with the blending stump. Right, so here I'm going to have to be quite careful with the marks that I put in. Maybe I'll zoom in on that just to get that bigger on the screen there for you. Can you see you've got very distinct little almost rings running around there, but they're squiggly rings. So take your time and get this little squiggly ring. When we did those initial marks, remember we lifted them out with the kneaded eraser, and we bent the kneaded eraser to give us that little duck nose to get those angles right. So your angles are there, but the actual wrinkles themselves are not quite there yet. They go a little bit more higgledy-piggledy in that direction. So you're going to take these nice lines that you've got and you're going to break them up and make them a little bit more higgledy-piggledy. So what I do is I just take this and I'll start maybe with a piece of line like that. And I'll make sure that is a little bit squiggly, not quite straight. Then I'll come with another line and I'll bridge this line to that line. Like that. And see what you've done. You've formed a bit of a wrinkle over there. And now I'll come back and I'll give myself a gap. By that bridge, see you've got this line, and you've bridged it, then you give yourself a little bit of a wide gap, and you continue with that other line over there. And that's how it becomes wiggledy-squiggledy. In other words, if you've got, let's do that, and that, and you've got, there's your initial lines that you've drawn. So what you've done now is you've bridged this one, and you've continued the line, so that, where's my eraser? This piece of the line is now missing. So this guy's now bridged and he's now continued maybe over there. Maybe that guy's solid. But then he ends up bridging maybe over there and continuing over there. And maybe even ends up bridging over there to the next line. Like that. So you've got these little pieces that disappear. And you've got those white bits in between. So it looks quite crazy there. But can you look carefully and you'll see that on the photograph. You've got those little bridging pieces. And that forms little snakes. It looks like little winding snakes. Quite random. But all it really is just, there's maybe a paw, there's a paw, there's a paw, there's a paw. And the skin is now wrinkled around the paw. Because it can't go through it, it has to go around it. Yeah, awesome. I'm happy with that. That's good enough. You see, it's just becoming a lot more subtle as we come around here. So I'm just making those guys not as prominent or not as dark as what we have over there. Okay, let's continue with the rest of the finger over here. Luckily, this finger's mostly washed out. There isn't that much work to do on him. So I'm just going to pick out just a few little ring kind of marks over there, just to create that impression that you can see detail, because we've done a lot of detail work over there. But because this guy is getting so much light, all those little details are now washed out inside the highlights. The lighter bits have just disappeared on us. That's cool there. Alrighty, let me see if I can move the camera up a little bit more. And then the picture as well. Yeah, that should be fine. In that corner there, it's really, really dark. So initially we just put that in with the a blender, a makeup sponge. So that now needs to get the correct tonal value. Get it nice and dark in there. And there are some 1 or 2 little wrinkles coming out from that. So I'm just going to plot them out over there. And fade this guy out very quickly over there like that. Yeah, that should be fine. Here, this also needs to go darker. It's not quite dark enough yet. And then this edge over here also needs to go a bit darker because he needs to curl around. Right. I think I'm going to just swap around with the picture and the drawing is. So I'm going to put you on that view for now. Yeah, that's better, right? We don't feel like we're boxing ourselves in. So can you see this edge over here is curling away from the light? So you're going to take your blending stump, work from inside the dark, and gradually pull it in towards the hand, and just very gently just tease that little sharp edge away. Just tease it. Just so that when you look closely, it is not a hard edge. And that just tells you that he's curling away from you. There's more that you can see outside of you. Alright, let's work on getting the rest of this tonal value right on this finger. Because he needs to be darker to make this guy stand up. Bring him forward. It's that contrast between this back one and the front one that makes it look like this is standing up. There's just a thing, I don't know why, it just works like that. A lighter thing appears closer and a darker thing appears further away. Yeah, can you see I'm now just fine-tuning all these little shapes and marks. But we initially just got them in more or less. Now we're getting them more accurate. And again, this is a finger that's at the back. So we don't need to make it as accurate as those guys, because he's going to be not the finger that you're really looking at. You're looking at these guys over here. I think that little thing of mine is a little bit too low down. This little highlight piece, I estimated him too low down. He should be more around here. So let's move him. It only takes a minute. Because we haven't been pressing hard with any pencils, everything is erasable. There we go, that's better. Now that shape over there looks more right. Okay, let's continue down here. Here's just some nice little easy peasy wrinkles now. Put in the wrinkle and fade it upwards. Here's the center of the wrinkle, fade it outwards. So all I'm doing is I'm looking for where's the darkest part of the wrinkle, and I'm fading it outwards. Then I'm looking, is it fading out quickly? Is it fading out slowly? Simple as that, really. Okay, now all of this in this vicinity need to go considerably darker. So I'm not pressing hard, just pressing gentle, just laying down graphite. The blending stump will do all the blending for me. So why am I not pressing hard? I could, but why am I not? Because I don't want the graphite to go shiny on me. If the graphite goes shiny, then you've got a problem. Okay, and the whole finger itself in this area is still too light. So darken up all that tonal value there. All of this is too dark, too light. Let's move the camera again. Yeah, let's get him to there. Alrighty, so I think we're nearly done for today's work. There's just a little bit of finagling over here to do. The worst is over. Yeah, I think for now I'm going to leave this here. You know how to do it now. I think you pretty much got good practice already. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll complete this area here and that area there. I mean, it's all the same as that, as what we've done previously. Let's move on to this nail. Let's tackle that nail. Then in the next class, then what we can do is we can work on the other hand, which is going to have other little tricks and things because he's not upside down. So you're seeing other parts of the hand. And obviously the coins themselves. Yeah, I'm just giving it a really just a very little light coating of graphite. And then I'll use the blending stump just to get that tonal value right over there. So all of this here is now going to have to go dark. So I'll just gently darken up around that, just so we don't lose the shape of this finger here. Alright, so in that little edge there where the nail appears, you know, this here by the cuticle and stuff, really dark. And as you can see, there's just a little bit of blending to do. Inside here, you've got that little white piece over underneath the nail there, like that. So I'm going to avoid that area for now. Leave it too light. That's okay. And I'm just going to gently blend this, and you could just as well do it with a pencil as well. But yeah, we're busy with the blending stump. We'll just stick with it. Okay, this guy here needs to move down a little bit, that highlight. I initially put him in a little bit too into the nail. So just adjusting his positioning. But I think you've seen now it's really easy to adjust stuff like that. That's super easy. So what I'm doing is I'm literally just copying what I'm seeing, and I'm adding the tonal values in the places where I see them. If you lift out these little highlights and you can't see them, that just tells you that the colors around them are not dark enough yet. So continue darkening up the areas around those little highlights of yours. even if it means you have to use your artist license a little bit to darken stuff up. Can you see how much nicer that little highlight is standing out now? Just simply because the colors around it are darker. Alrighty, now that we've got that right, now we can start over here. It's darker over here and blend him outwards, making sure to not lose that little arch. In that area over there. Okay, and I'm also blending that dark line that we put in for that little cuticle piece. I'm blending that color or that graphite upwards to show the rounding there where your nail and the skin meet. See if we can see that. Maybe on the thumb you can see it more distinct. How can I do that? Like that. Can you see there's a distinct, the nail goes like this, and then you've got a change of angle or a rounding where it curls up or where the skin curls around to meet the nail. Okay, we'll darken up over here. Yeah, we're super close to finish this, eh? We're super close. I don't usually like going over the 2-hour mark. I know we are slightly over, but we're all committed now, aren't we? So we'll tackle it. Why not? What the heck? Let's do that. Just blend that in over there just to get that rounding and so on. Okay, this piece over here just needs to lighten up ever so slightly. So I lighten him and then I get his tonal value right. Here as well, there's also just that little bit of just a random little highlight happening over there. I don't know if it's a reflection or something. But we're spotting it, so what the heck, we'll put it in just because we can. We know how. There's a little bit of a highlight happening there. Yeah, what the heck, guys, let's quickly finish this. It's not much work left. It's so little work, just a few little lines and things. Then at least we can stand back and see what we've done for the day. So here, we need to just get that tonal value right. Darkening up this far edge over here to show that it's rounding off. Same thing over there. Cool. Let's get our little wrinkles in. There aren't too many on this finger over here because everything is all nice and stretched out over there. Just like that. Yeah. Here's a nice little shadow. Make sure that you've got a distinct little line over there, because that shows you that the light ends over there, and this here's in shadow. So that's quite important to get that little bit of a line there. Okay, and all this here is dark, so let's get that little line there for the edge of the nail. It's really super dark over there. Let's work him in to show the rounding. Same as what we did over there. Then I'm using the leftover graphite just to get that in over there. And then it's really dark over here again, in this area. So we get some graphite down there, and we blend it away. Okay, here and there's one or two little highlights on these wrinkles that we need to put in. Yes, like there, like that. And a little bit lighter over there. And here I can see this little fold and must go a little bit further down over there. Let's stand back and look at our day's work. There we go. Yeah, I'm happy with that so far. Let's maybe overlay the overlay the photo just so that we can compare. So guys, if you have enjoyed today's lesson up to this point, before we continue, I want to briefly tell you about my real-time paint and draw along art classes on my website. For a very small amount, you can get access to over 400 paint and draw along tutorials where you pack out your art supplies and you follow along as I show and explain to you in step-by-step detail how to complete each project. There are classes in acrylic, oil, watercolor, pencil, soft pastel, and even lesser known mediums like pen and ink and scratchboarding. There's a link in the description below. Take a look. You'll be amazed at the awesome classes available there. Alrighty, let's continue from where we left off. Yeah, I think we can go to there and let's dump that hand overlay. I don't think we need that anymore. Thank you for joining me in the class today. Next time we'll tackle the other hand. I think this one, the other hand will go a lot quicker because there's not quite as much detail in there to do. So maybe we'll even sneak in those the coins as well. So thanks for joining me. Good luck with the texturing on your hand. I'll see you next time. Guys in the live class, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that and have yourself a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next time.